Hello, ladies, and welcome to your third community of practice session. I'm going to try to make this short and sweet, but please just make sure that there's one question on the Google form that I'm going to have you answer after watching this video. And then if you will make sure that you fill out the survey link for your particular grade level so that you are able to get credit for your stipend at the end of the year. Just as a reminder, the purpose of the community of practice is just to come together as a community of educators with similar contexts to offer support and collaboration and to problem solve any challenges that we may have when we encounter when we're going through the Amplify lessons. So I just kind of want you to think about this question for a second. What features from previous COP, from previous community of practice sessions, have best supported you as you've been implementing Amplify? So just kind of think about that question for a second. What has actually helped you when you're implementing Amplify through these sessions? So before we get into this particular session, I just want to remind everyone that the school year session 3 is already up and live in your TEA Learn module in Canvas. So please just make sure that you complete that coursework so that, again, that you're eligible for that stipend at the end of the pilot program. So for today, let's go ahead and explore the most effective responses to some student work samples that you guys have been looking at, those activity pages that you have been looking at through Amplify. So we're going to look at that and we're going to see how those activity pages and those work samples have been have leveraged future lessons and how we can best support our student learning after reviewing those. So let's go ahead and dig into the community of practice materials. Let's take a look at this scenario. I want you to go ahead, take about 2 to 3 minutes to read through this scenario yourself. And for the moment, we are just simply reading and internalizing the scenario. We're going to determine those action steps that the teacher should take a little bit later on in the session. But for now, go ahead and take 2 to 3 minutes and read this scenario to yourself. If you need a few more minutes to continue reading the scenario, go ahead and just pause the video and press play whenever you're ready. Okay, so I want you to think about this scenario and I want you to make a connection because I feel like most of us have been in this situation before. And I want you to think about the 2 questions that you see below right there. What are some successes and what are some challenges that you have experienced in the past when determining action steps after looking at your student work samples? Okay, we've all been there before. We've had a scenario where, the majority of our students are getting it, they're understanding, just like in this one here, 65%. But then we have those students who just don't get it. Okay, so what are some of those successes that you've had, and what are some challenges that you've experienced after looking at those samples? So remember, the teacher was trying to work on developing action steps based on the analysis of the student's work. So let's examine a few tools that will support you as you begin to develop your own action steps. One of the action steps that Amplify provides is called the Accommodation Companion Guide for Amplify Texas Literacy Program. Okay. And it just aligns with the accommodations that you may have already included in your IEPs, maybe in your Section 504 accommodation plans, in your linguistic accommodations for your EBs. And it just allows you to see the connection between some of the accommodations that the students may receive and then this particular digital resource that's available already to you. So again, this is one resource that you can use to help support your students who may be struggling with those work samples. Amplify also provides what's called the Amplify Texas Literacy Program and specifically designed instruction field user guide. And this one supports, it's specifically for your students with disabilities, okay? And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna link this in the presentation so that if you wanna refer back to it, maybe you have a student with disability that's struggling with Amplify, you can click on this link and there's that resource right there for you. So, in addition, there are other opportunities within Amplify that provide additional support, such as the culminating activities, which can be found at the end of the TEs, at the end of those domains. And there's also those remediation section at the that can also support your students. I've sometimes used those remediation activities instead of using the actual lesson plan in Amplify because I know it just best supports those particular students at that time. So don't forget about those two opportunities as well. Small group opportunities are also embedded within the Amplify lessons and on those pausing point days to allow you guys to provide instructions to those small groups as needed. So please utilize those pausing points and those small group lessons within Amplify. There's also those embedded supports on the sidebar, in that gray area over here on the Amplify lessons that also offer specific support and challenge opportunities as well. So I know sometimes I like to use those questions over here on the side. I'm going to use these for maybe my lower babies. And then I also like to pull in those question stems, those advanced question stems for my higher students as well. So now that we've had an opportunity to examine some tools that will support you in better crafting your data focused action steps, I want you to take some time to reflect on this next question. Take a look at that scenario again. What action step recommendations would you suggest for this teacher to build upon the strengths and to address the growth of her students, either in whole group or in small group? Think about that for a second. After looking at all those remediation and recommendations that Amplify has, what would you suggest for this particular teacher to use? So now let's dig into our community of practice, to our community of practice materials, connecting to the student work analysis protocol. Take a moment to reflect on the connections between developing action steps and the student work analysis protocol. Again, on this presentation, you're going to find this protocol linked for you, so you can take a look at that as well. So now that we have a little bit more information, which I kind of know that you understand those recommendations that Amplify already puts into those lessons for you, and you've kind of been a little bit more familiar with those resources that help with student work, I want you to think, how might you apply what Amplify has embedded already into those resources for your particular students? Okay, when you're looking at your students' work and the development of those action steps to your own students' work, what could you use to help you, or what do you already use to help you help when you are analyzing your students' work samples. Okay, finally, I want you to take a moment to reflect on the questions on your screen. What TEA Learn feature or product resources might you revisit to further develop your understanding of the Amplify Literacy program? And then also think about this. How do you plan to give or get support during upcoming COP sessions? Just a couple questions to think about. As always, if you have any questions about looking at your work samples and what action steps you can take next, please feel free to reach out to me. And that way we can sit down and kind of talk about what we can do to best support your students. If you will, log into, get back into the Google form, and I want you to think about that particular question. What is something that you have already done after looking at your student work samples to help your students either master what they are doing or to actually develop their skills even further after looking at their work samples? And don't forget to fill out the survey so that you can get credit for your COP3 session. Thanks, ladies.